Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, the podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, Agile experts, including professional Scrum trainers and other industry thought leaders, share their stories and experiences. We also explore hot topics in our space with thought-provoking, challenging, energetic discussions. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast. I'm your host, Dave West, CEO here at Scrum.org. In today's podcast, we're discussing a recently published book, The Anatomy of a Product. As you know, particularly for the people that have been here a few times and listened to a few podcasts, I'm really into product. I love it. Product is my jam, as all the young people are saying now. Actually, probably not. And product is a fundamental part of Scrum. So it's always very interesting to talk about any new work in this area. So to discuss this new book, I have the authors. I'm very lucky. They both agreed to come on the podcast. I've got Sander Durr, professional Scrum trainer, fellow podcast host. Some of you may have listened to Mastering for Agility. I've been on that podcast, I think, once or twice. Awesome podcast. And Ryan Brook, professional Scrum trainer, author, founder of OptiLearn, and actually, I've just got to be honest, I just spent a week with Ryan in Tokyo, in Japan, speaking to lots of really cool, interesting companies and actually doing an event there. So apologies if we drop into our sort of like, we've just spent a week together moment. But welcome to the podcast, Sander and Ryan.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Good to be here again.
Oh, it's great to be here. And so a little bit over a year ago, you were on the podcast talking about your first book, Solving for Value, which talks about how you build teams and organizations that really focus on value, which is quite hard, or surprisingly hard, actually, considering what the purpose of most teams is. So what motivated you to write another book?
Well, it started the idea started when we were writing Solving for Value. One of the things that we noticed, both when writing the book, but also in our professional Scrum classes, working with our clients, is they often have no idea what a product or what their product truly looks like. Is it a component? Is it the entire thing? Should we focus on this specific user? And even there, the stupid consultant answer applies. It depends. It really depends on perspective, how we want to focus on what is our product. So ultimately, we figured we're going to write a book and try to shine some light on this specific topic and how to approach this stuff, what is involved and what is not, and how to build a product from end to end. Because ultimately, Scrum teams or product teams should be accountable from the beginning, from the conception until it's been decommissioned, right? So these were all concepts that were vaguely existing, but never really understood by many organizations that we work with. Ryan, how was that for you?
The reason we kind of wrote the book is because you kind of forced me to, Sander. No, I mean, in more seriousness, we do a lot of product consultancy, right? We believe that the people who train kind of product stuff should also be the people consulting. And this kind of tangible idea of product was so poorly or intangibly understood that we wanted to try and make a field guide that kind of talks you through lots of different sections. And so that's what we've tried to produce using a lovely metaphor of the body.
And I just want to lean in a little bit about that metaphor. I picked up on this metaphor, and it actually meant that I spent longer on it, honestly, because it was super interesting, and I loved it. This idea that a product has an anatomy, is composed of parts that are dependent on each other, which, if you change one thing, it has an impact on another thing. There's the idea, a bit like you never really understand it, really, which is the reason why it's called practicing medicine, which I always worry every time I go and see a doctor. But it was really interesting metaphor. Why did you do that? Why did you use that, an anatomy of a product, as the sort of like the glue?
Fundamentally, when we work in products, we just think the word complexity is used all the time. And you just talked about practicing medicine. There's so much that we still don't understand. We try something, we see what happens, and then we try and hopefully realize a benefit, realize some value. when it comes to bodies, we kind of wanted to use this metaphor because it tells a story. There's so many sections that we can all relate to, but also having a metaphor just creates those knowledge hooks for people to be able to go, reproduction. Well, actually, reproduction is about scaling a product, right? Creating a baby, let's not go into that one in too much, is a spark of a DNA or creating something new.
I think it's interesting that in professional Scrum in our class, we always talk about living artifacts, right?
Yeah.
Interestingly, when the product has gone to production, it seems like that is the end state for many teams. Like we've put it to production, and it's not the living artifact anymore that we want it to be. It needs to be adapted. It has things that can change. The whole thing is alive, whereas it almost feels like the end point for many teams, and that's the thing that we want to avoid. So much like the anatomy of a body, it has a skeleton, it has a spark of life, it has like the first steps that you want to pick up, and it needs to evolve until some products, not every product needs to continuously stay alive. At a certain point you want to pull the plug and you want to decommission it. That's completely fine, but also some products are so good that you want to build an entire family about this. What if we get to that scaling point that we have many products? How do we deal with that stuff? Like it's never a single standalone thing if you're in a scaled organization. So how should we set that organization up? How do we deal with those kind of elements? And again, it's a completely living system that we need to take into consideration. And yet those are topics that many organizations don't really consider in how to set that up and how to think about their whole product thinking.
Yeah, I love the metaphor. I love the digestive system. That always it creates a lot of imagery in your head and about
Absolutely.
junk food, good food. How do you feed it? And I guess that's part of the backlog. My experience of backlogs is that they have a lot of really bad food in them as a rule, unfortunately. It also, I love the idea that just like any living thing, it's part of an open system. Usually, most products don't live in isolation unless you're maybe on a spaceship or something, and even then, probably not. I thought that was really, really interesting. The circular system, really, really interesting. This flow of value, I thought was nice. And minimal lovable product was kind of cute. I love that.
Cute. We're keeping it professional here, Dave.
Yes, obviously very. I just thought the difference between viable and lovable is such an interesting. It got me thinking. I'm not sure it's totally right, but it got me thinking, and that was perhaps what the book was trying to do. Right, it was trying to get you thinking, and I thought it was really, really good. So, tell me a little bit about both of you. A Scrum, obviously, I met you because you're both professional Scrum trainers. I've been very fortunate to spend quite a lot of time with you talking about Scrum and product because that's my passion. Oh, the book, though, you mentioned that you felt you needed it when you were writing solving for value, and you were seeing how disconnected organizations were from the idea of a product and actually what they were doing. What does it do? As it's taken us beyond frameworks, why did you really realize that you needed a book that wasn't what we'd had already? What was that big change?
There's a couple of things in here. Let's start off with that. Theory and practice often are two vastly different things, right? We talk about the picture perfect scenarios, how things should be. There's a whole myriad of many theoretical perspectives on how things should be that often don't apply in many people's organizations. Stuff that has been discussed in Silicon Valley often only adhere to and apply to Silicon Valley because it's such an anomaly in the whole product space, which I think is awesome, but it's not necessarily very applicable to the other people, and therefore making these books almost redundant. So we wanted to build that gap or fill that gap between theory and practice, and also create like a connection between all these theoretical books. Like all these specialists, they all have their specialism, awesome, but we are more like the general practitioner that you go to for the wider adoption, and we can refer you to specialists on certain topics. That's where this idea also started. And to make this more applicable, we used the knowledge of the awesome company Miro, or Miro, however you want to call it, in how they applied the concepts that we discuss in the book and how they bring that to life.
Yeah, I think I'll come at it from a similar angle. The reason we wrote this book was because we're very fortunate to work with thought leaders in this area, but we have to acknowledge that the vast majority of product professionals are not thought leaders, right? They are trying to just do the best for their product. So I kind of talk about this being quite a humble book. This doesn't expect anything of you. It's not vastly theoretical based. It's how do I use this scenario, in our case, Miro? How do I take these concepts using a simple metaphor of body that we all understand to help us all take something away? And that's why we felt the book was needed. Take it away from that abstracted theoretical level to something practical.
And it gives people literally the questions, almost homework to think about, reflective as well as reflective. At the beginning of every chapter, we'll have everyone think ahead about the topic that's about to follow. How do you think this applies in your organization? Followed by the content, followed by Miro, and then followed by some reflective questions. So how can you now improve this stuff? So it's not just, hey, here is the theory and now good luck with this. We make people actively think on what they can improve and how they want to do this.
Yeah, it made me feel a little bit like it was a training class that I was experiencing myself through a book, because okay, let's think about the topic, get some framing, which is what we do, and then teach you some stuff, and then look at how that applies in your context, and that, which I thought was really good. So
it's interesting you say that, because when I look at it, I basically see the PSPOA class. For those people who haven't ever experienced it, Advanced Toolkit Product-Based Class, this is an expanded version of quite a lot of the curricula there.
And when you can obviously have at home on your desk when the real stuff's happening for an inspiration. How did that work with Miro? So you work with Miro, right? Or Miro, or however you say their name. First rule of products, have a name that everybody can say. But you work with them. How did that change your perspective on a day-to-day basis? Was it really that taking this sort of more practical approach? Is that how it made you think about the work of product?
Yes, and the amount of work and the amount of knowledge work that goes into a product that they serve and how they balance this out. Also, we've been fortunate enough to work with UX researchers. We've been fortunate enough to work with product managers, but also a founder of a company that's called Butter. Miro acquired the company, so how they then deal with integrating that stuff and also thinking about how can we prevent this waste? How can we prevent our system, our body from bloating? Made it a very interesting thing for us as well. We learned a lot from both Miro itself and also our perspectives changed at some point, and how this integration and the more business side of things integrate in product thinking as well. To me, it was incredibly interesting.
Yeah, the practical. So I love all those theoretical books about product. I lived in Silicon Valley. I've worked in Silicon Valley. I love lot of stuff happens there. But when you actually take to and apply it, it is actually a lot different. Silicon Valley is unique, as you highlighted, Sander, and everybody goes, "Oh, I want to be like Silicon Valley," but you can't be. You don't live next door to to somebody that works at one of your competitors that you have dinner with, once a week. You can't, the flow of skills in that environment is very, very different. And honestly, I don't necessarily believe that they build for their users. They build for themselves more. And I don't necessarily always like the things that come out of Silicon Valley. So it's very interesting that you've taken that. Now, slight different topic. Tell me about marshmallow backlogs. I love a good marshmallow. I particularly like a s'more. So that's when did that come into this?
Nice and squishy and tasty, right? I've got to let Sander take this one. I'm conscious. I know he just answered the last question, but you've got to take this one now, dude.
similar to bloat and like the size of the expansion, talking about scale and waste in the system. A marshmallow, even though it looks very nice, it looks very tasty, it doesn't have that much nutritional value, right? And that's the same with
No.
these. I know it's a shocker. Now you learn something again. There you go, Dave. It's
Disappointed. I'm very disappointed. But
I
yes.
know. I'm sorry, but that's the same with these kind of backlogs. It seems very nice to have all this stuff. Like there's so much work to do, but it doesn't mean that everything is valuable, right? And it's Jesse Houwing. He's known for saying or for bringing his thoughts out on scaling, saying it's more about minimizing the amount of work and try to get as maximum value out of as little amount of work. And that's the same with your backlog. Try to minimize the amount of marshmallow stuffing that's in there and really focus on the core nutritional bits. Get those in and try to keep your body as lean as possible. And it's the same with having people stay busy, right? It's resource utilization, etc. doesn't mean that they're actually valuable. Having people just be busy is the same as a hamster running in his wheel. Like they go wild. There's a lot of motion, but there's no progress. And that's the same with these backlogs. And before you know it, your marshmallow backlog becomes a graveyard backlog where ideas come to die. Like again, motion does not equate to progress.
Yeah, a nice tip to try with your teams for people who are listening. Assuming you've got a product goal or at least some sort of strategic vision, just go through your 100, 200 items and just put a tick next to each one that actually contributes towards that goal. If you're looking at 10, 15, 20% of those items contributing towards your goal, what's going on? What are you doing with the other 80%? Perhaps you have got a marshmallow backlog or a graveyard backlog. I think we also call them in the book, very similar. The place where ideas go to die. Don't let that be your backlog. Let it be a store of potential value.
It's really challenging though. It's easy to say that, but it's actually kind of hard to do it because
yes and no.
Well, if you look at your team and you look at the skills that they have and the experiences and their biases, etc., and then you look at the work that's coming in, most managers sort of do some sort of connection between those two, and then that ultimately determines what you're working on. What you're saying actually is like, yeah, that's cool, but you really need to, as Ryan said, tick the things that are connected to the goal. And that might mean that some of your teammates aren't necessarily as busy with, as you would expect, right? Or as your manager wants, that utilization idea. And that might mean they'll have to work on things that are outside their comfort zone, partner with other people, etc. So it is hard, Sander, don't you think?
Yes, that's more on like the skill set of people. But when we talk about backlog management, it's fairly easy, I would say. Maybe not always as fun to be on the stakeholder side, but do you know the tool Chaos Monkey from Netflix that breaks random? I recommend product owners to be just like Chaos Monkey. Just rip something off your backlog, see who starts to scream. If no one screams, apparently it's not that valuable. So maybe you found some waste in the system. And that's something that you can do with developers in that sense as well. Let's dive into what is valuable here and what's not, and how can we actually move the needle in, even if it's in like a turtle or tortoise, actually slowly moving rather than just keep busy.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about the complexity of product backlog management, and also how it's not just about the product, it's also about the people, right? When we say things are easy theoretically, and that's the reason why we kind of brought in a story towards this entire book, so that people go, do you know what? I'm not alone. And when we talk about marshmallow backlogs, what we really mean is just ensure you have that coherent idea that you're forcing, that your team is working towards. Because without it, all you will end up doing is, the duck the legs under the water, pedaling faster, actually not moving that quickly. So just make sure you know what you're aiming for.
Yeah. It's also has a lot to do with collecting evidence as well, that an idea is a good idea and what we expect to get out of this.
Yeah. I think it's testament, right? 70% of features are rarely or never used. And, you just need to open up Excel or many of the apps that are on your desktop. And you're like, oh, there's a lot of stuff here. What is it? And and you appreciate it.
So I love that statement, Dave. 70% of features are never used. Well, if we extrapolate that to arguably 70% of your effort, then is wasted. But my problem is that the level of validation that I see in product teams right now does not equate to 70%. And it worries me that we are wasting 70%, and that limited validation does not help us find out where those 70% reside. Hypothetically 70%, but if I asked any team, where is that 70% waste? Not in our product. It's not for us.
No. Because it's what Sander was saying, really, talking about evidence, talking about flipping requirements to actually outcomes, to trying to define what are we trying to achieve, the why, rather than how we're going to do it, which we can spend an awful lot of time focusing on. There's also an interesting set of choices you have to make about quality and about these very bizarre cases that you build into your product to support certain think situations that happen 0.00001% or maybe never happen. And instead of saying, okay, we just boot that to a human being and they deal with it, we build all this elaborate capability, which then is an overhead to manage and to change. Yeah, but I guess at the end of the day, that doesn't mean we don't like marshmallows, Sander, right? We can still eat them, even though we have to. I know your body's a temple, but we just have to be mindful of managing our marshmallows.
And even there, the beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, right? If you value marshmallows, be my guest.
And if you talk to my children, I think they would definitely value them as this. And my son does the "how many marshmallows can you fit in your mouth" game, which one day I think he's going to end up choking himself to death or something. So I'm very mindful of
but that's what a lot of teams play too. Like, how many product backlog items can I collect before everything blows up?
Yes, and yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, I look at my own backlogs though, and it's taking that time. And I guess this is true, just to take that analogy of the human body, and it's taking the time to assess, to do that, to check in, do your temperature, put that ring on that gets you all sorts of data. I know Ryan loved his, though interestingly took it off in Japan because all it was telling him was he needed to slow down,
Don't tell everyone
stop drinking, and go to bed earlier. It was like, well, I'm not ignoring that.
That didn't work, did it?
But
that's where those texts came from, Ryan.
There are, and we don't talk about the photos, Sander.
Yeah, we certainly don't. But what was interesting is though, it's taking that time, right? Being mindful and being focused on balance and understanding, taking that step back, and I think that is definitely true of any good back and any good human body as well. Having that data, spending that time, and thinking about those things.
Yeah, and like any body, our products can get diseases as well. And luckily for us, Radhika Dutt, author of Radical Product Thinking, she wrote the foreword of the book. She talks about product diseases a lot, and we have some that we touch upon this in this case as well. It's don't assume that your product will always be healthy. Like, even if it's your cash cow, even cows can get sick, right? You want to prevent these things from creeping in. And the other one person who wrote the foreword was Ari van Bennekom, one of the co-founders of the Agile Manifesto. So even to us, this is, again, it's been a wild story.
Yeah, I think for us, this idea whole of anatomy of a product, I love Grey's Anatomy as a TV program, and we're sitting there watching it. Don't judge, Dave. I love my Meredith. And what we were thinking is that not necessarily, this is not supposed to be a textbook. This is not supposed to be the official Grey's Anatomy, the real book that exists for medicine, right? But it is hopefully something you can dip in and out of, right? Yes, you can read it end to end, but all products are at different stages, and this book talks about products in different stages using a theme of Miro. But do you want to learn how to look at metrics? Well, maybe go and have a look at the nervous system. Do you want to look at how you could scale and talk about more of a product family? Then maybe reproduction is your area. So that's what we wanted to try and do for people. Give them 10 to 15 pages. How can you do this? And that's where we ended up.
It's very practical. All right. So talking of practical, what's the biggest takeaway or mind shift change that you would hope readers will walk away with after reading this book? What's the outcome that you sort of were thinking or you were bearing in mind as you wrote this book?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. Do you want to go first to give me time to think, Sander, or are you going to force me to go first?
Yes to both. No, I think it comes back to the idea that your product is a living thing and it's not just your output, and then you can get your hands off and not my problem anymore. It's you have to maintain this thing, assess it, see if there's any waste, see how we keep it healthy. Are we just keeping it on life support, or do we need to end its misery and pull the plug? Just be mindful of where you're at, what it's actually delivering, and what do we need to do next? I think that to me is the biggest takeaway that I hope the reader goes home with.
Yeah. I think mine would be almost exactly the same takeaway as I said in the podcast when we did Solving for Value. And I've just gone into our final word actually while Sander was answering, and it's 4 words. You are not alone. And whenever I write books, this second book, but no, when we wrote the last book and when we wrote this one, it's not written for this vacuum of potential readers. It's written for the person listening to this podcast right now, the person reading this book. We want to say we've been there. It's not perfect. Here are some of the ideas we've gained from the trenches and maybe being 5-10 years ahead of you in experience. What can you hopefully learn from us? But we're also really keen. Please connect with us and tell us yours. At the end of the day, there's already a 3rd book potentially in the running, and we love stories. So please connect with us and talk to us.
And if I can do one shameless self plug here, January 13th we have the book launch event in our office in Amsterdam, where we gather with all the audience that wants to sign up. You can go to the NL Scrum page on meetup.com. You can find it there. Join us for workshops, join us for free dinner, drinks, free copy of the book. Arie van Bennekom, again, one of the co-founders of the Agile Manifesto. He's going to be speaking there. We'll present the book. And again, everyone goes home with a book. It's free, and we hope to see you all there.
That's awesome. We will obviously include those links in the show notes. So they'll be below this podcast on Scrum.org. So you'll be able to find that link, or at least just click on it. And if you're in the area, I definitely recommend it. Gentlemen, thank you for spending this time with me today. I love the book, love the metaphor. I think the metaphor just keeps delivering fabulous things. I love the fact that you obviously, just like any athlete, you obviously build the system in support of the goal. So if you're running marathons, you best not be, 400 pounds and really muscular. If you're a defensive lineman on American football, you need to be more like that. There's so many ways in which this metaphor delivers value when you're thinking about your product. So I really appreciate you opening my mind to that. Thank you for that.
And thank you for having us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Dave.
And thank you for reading it.
You write in a very, addictive way. I don't want to say it like that. It's kind of easy to read, which is a good thing. It's a good testament. So that's
we thank you for that.
That's awesome. So and listeners, thank you for listening today. Today we were very, very lucky. Had 2 awesome people on. Sander Durr, professional Scrum trainer, fellow podcast host, and Ryan Brook, professional Scrum trainer, author and founder of OptiLearn. They joined me to talk about their new book, Anatomy of a Product. It's should be out as this podcast hits. So feel free to find it. We'll put some links in the show notes so you can easily find this book. And you also were invited, Sander invited you all to the book launch party, where I heard free drinks and food, which is,
And
and you
book.
get, and book, you get a copy of the book to take away. So that's awesome. That doesn't mean you can't buy it now, though. So, I mean, you can never have too many of this book, right? Which is great. So, thank you for listening today. Today's to Scrum.org community podcast. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, share with friends, and of course, come back and listen to some more. I'm lucky enough to have a variety of guests talking about everything in the area of professional Scrum, product thinking, and of course, Agile. Thanks, everybody, and Scrum on.